อะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ It is our understanding that the beginning of the holy life, or the beginning of the process by which we shake off our old habits and attitudes and realign ourselves, our body, speech and mind in the way which is leading to clarity, liberation, that begins with the going to see, the approaching, the contact with a wise person, with a noble one. But for most of us, having grown up in coarse pagan cultures where Arya Pugalas are few and far between, or even completely lacking, we, for most of us, have come to the teachings, at least originally, to begin with, through reading, and perhaps reading works of contemporary authors, or if we've been fortunate to come across the suttas, and perhaps we have some initial revelation and great feeling of faith arises, or perhaps it takes longer for us to be truly impressed by the teachings of the Lord Buddha. And that word that we use in English is a very graphic word, but one that we probably don't usually bring much attention to. The word of being impressed by something, that feeling as if one's soft or wax-like, and there is an impression, something enters into our very being. I remember myself as a layperson and starting to study. On one occasion, which I remember with some embarrassment, now finding myself in a little monastery in India, a Tibetan monastery, with a copy of the Dhammapada, and kind of flicking through it and finding it kind of elementary. And craving for something which is a little bit more kind of meaty and complex, and meeting this other Westerner, Turkish actually, and he had a copy of a book on Naropa, Naropa's teachings, and Marpa and Naropa and all that stuff, and I did him a swap. We were both quite happy, and I sort of had something interesting to read on my way back to Europe as I was hitchhiking and hanging out, and I couldn't read more than about 2 or 3 pages of this stuff, and this great sense of regret for the Dhammapada, and realized, of course, with most things you realize how wonderful they are once they've been separated from you. But fortunately I was able to get another copy of the Dhammapada, and I found subsequently became one of my favorite texts, because I wasn't looking for anymore for intellectual stimulation and complex conceptual structures, but looking for some clear analysis of my condition, and for accurate and practical ways of doing something about it. This was where I found the Theravada scriptures excelled, and the beginning of the strong faith and an inspiration in the words of the historical Buddha. And this is something which has stayed with me and grown as I've had the opportunity to, a certain extent, to put these teachings to the test, and they've never let me down. I've let them down plenty of times, but they've never let me down. And and the more that one reads the suttas, I believe, the more one sees this sense that one is the impression of a single individual. There's a single voice that carries through the suttas, carries through the Nikayas, although it may be expressed in different ways, just as a master singer may have a great range and be able to sing different kinds of songs and in different ways, but there is this unmistakable, there's something totally unique in that voice, and I found that with the Buddha, and if we compare it with the Mahayana suttas, then we see a great difference there, where there may be some profound teachings, but there's certainly no sense of a single voice throughout the Mahayana suttas, which seek to present the viewpoint of the various schools that arose after Buddha's parinibbana. So what is the response when one reads the Buddhist teachings in the Theravada canon? I think there are two responses. One is the sense of wanting to pay respects to the teachings. I find myself even to this day sometimes if I'm reading the suttas, the Majjhima Nikaya or something, and I'm just so enraptured by something that I actually close the book and just put it on my head for a few minutes, just sort of hold it there. The sense of wanting to puja and wanting to worship that which is fine and lovely and noble and superior is, I think, a very deep, basic need the human being. But the Buddha spoke on this particular subject on a number of occasions, talking about the two different kinds of puja. This twofold classification actually is found elsewhere, particularly well known in the classification of the two kinds of Dhamma heirs, in which it's more strongly or forcibly explained. In terms of puja, then this is classification into Amisa Puja, or the worship with material things, and the Bhati Bhati Puja. This is the worship with practice. And the Buddha never forbade or criticized offerings of candles and incense and flowers as such, but he was very clear that this was a basic or inferior kind of worship, and one in which he took no great pleasure. The thing that pleased him was those of his disciples who worshipped him through their practice. Because for the 45 years of his teaching career, right until the very last day, right until the very last minutes of his life, he had no motives other than the welfare and happiness of sentient beings. And so whenever he saw sentient beings abandoning those things which caused them suffering and developing those things which led to their freedom from suffering, he felt mudita, and he was pleased by it. So he encouraged his disciples, especially his ordained disciples, to worship him with their lives, worship them with their every breath, worship them with the quality of their actions, the quality of their speech, the quality of their thoughts, and their reflections. And it's wonderful how the Buddha was always able to pull these things together and make one harmonious whole, and see the connections, or create connections between things. So in our case, perhaps we're struggling with defilement, struggling to be mindful, struggling to be restrained, struggling with greed for food, for sensory enjoyments, fighting to curb irritation, bad temper, sense of grief and sadness and depression, agitation, so on, and we may feel that this is our own private, sometimes rather tawdry little drama, and something which has no great wider significance. But when we look at it in the light of the Buddha's words, then we see that every time, no matter how minor and insignificant a step it might seem, just that small effort to avert your eyes from a beautiful woman, to restrain the hand that's going out for another sweet, just to swallow that impulse to say something cutting or clever or hurtful, that impulse to just to walk another 10 minutes or 15 minutes on the Jongkrom path, just to put another half hour into sitting before you go to sleep. Just those little things, those impulses, those wholesome intentions. These are called the worship of the Buddha. This is Buddha Puja. This is the Patipati Puja. And this is what pleased the Buddha and pleases, encourages the noble ones. I don't think that there are even the most fierce of the forest ajahns who expects his disciples to be impeccable in all that they do. But that which is really encourages and uplifts teachers, and I certainly wouldn't put myself on the same level as great forest monks, but from my own experience, just this sense that someone is sincere and dedicated in trying to do the best they can, that's all that you need as a teacher. Don't expect people to be perfect, not to make mistakes, not to lose their mindfulness, not to do silly things or say silly things, but just this sense of overall dedication and sincerity to free themselves from defilements, the sense of giving your life. And the saying that we refer to a lot, that the Ajahn Jayasaro saying, "Have you come here to die?" And most everyone finds that a bit intimidating. But there's another way to look at it, isn't there? It's, are you ready? Are you ready to come here to die? It can also be said, are you ready to give your life? Are you ready to give your life to Buddha Dhamma Sangha? When you die, it's not like a meaningless death. It's a death of something which is coarse and ultimately trivial and meaningless. But through burning up our defilements, the fire of Dhamma practice, then we give our life to Buddha Dhamma Sangha. And grounding your practice in the daily mundane little struggles that we have, grounding them within the context of our efforts to worship and show our gratitude to the Lord Buddha himself and to our teachers. This is something which can enliven and dignify even the times when things get really, really tough. When we kind of get that childish side of us comes out. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it. I know it's good for me, but I don't want to do it. It's like sometimes our minds are always like kids with greens. When you're a kid and you just want to eat the chips, and your mum says, "You can eat the greens as well." I don't want to eat the greens. They're good I know they're good for me. Eat them up. No, don't want to. It's like this with practice sometimes. So you have to find a intelligent and a wise way of looking at things. And I find this in terms of this context of making an offering to the Buddha. It's like even if just imagine that the Buddha was to appear. Let's just suppose that the Buddha was able to manifest. And and you don't have almost nothing. Suppose you were a lay person. You were a dirt poor. But you'd find something, wouldn't you? Something to offer the Buddha. You would be able to bear it for the Buddha to have come to your town or your village, and not to have given him anything at all. And you remember that story of the poor husband and wife who don't have enough pieces of cloth for them to both go out fully clothed at the same time, and the husband it's the husband's turn to go out, and he ends up giving one of the pieces of cloth to the Buddha, even though he knows it's going to cause a lot of problems in his family. But there's just the power of that faith, and we'd all, I'm sure every one of us would be exactly the same as that. Even if you had something which is miserable and embarrassing, you'd still want to give it rather than give nothing at all. And this is how to look on your practice. Maybe it's late at night and you're walking and you're not very peaceful. Better just go and crash out and get a bit of extra sleep and make a fresh start in the morning. And then you think, well, I'll do this as Buddha Puja. I'll offer this just this extra bit of practice to the Buddha as best as I can. And this is a way of helping to strengthen our commitment to the path and the practice. And Buddha says this is what pleases the Buddha. This is what pleases the noble ones. It's putting forth this effort to purify our body, speech, and mind with the Buddha himself and all his great disciples from the time of the Buddha himself until the present day as witnesses and as proof in the practicality of the efficacy of this teaching. This isn't just a kind of ideal, totally impractical ideal that no one's actually ever been able to live up to, but has some kind of romantic appeal to it. This is absolutely practical by any one of us. There's nothing that the Buddha ever taught that was beyond the reach, beyond the capabilities of human beings, which is why he was such an unexcelled trainer of devas and men, because he knew exactly the capacities of human beings, exactly what is possible, what is feasible, what can be done, what can't be done. And so he was able to present a teaching which was sufficient and which is a gradual training, leading onwards, leading inwards, one which doesn't let us down. So when we have this teaching which doesn't let us down, then we have to try not to let the teaching down. We have to live up to it and make use of it, and not expect it to be easy. When we look at the Buddha's background and history, someone who's been making merit, creating barami for countless lifetimes, and then still had to struggle awfully through those years of ascetic practices, and it still took him 6 years of really hard effort, and I think probably just a single day or two of the kind of effort the Buddha put into that long misguided period of ascetic practices is probably more than most of us would put in a year, and he's recounted some of his practices, and they're quite marvelous and amazing that he's able to do that. If the Buddha himself had to work so hard, and the great disciples had so many obstacles, and then what about us? I mean, how could we expect it to be easy? We have to really gird our loins, as they say, and really be prepared for whatever comes, hard or easy. And who knows? We never know. We might just fluke it. We might be lucky. We might be lucky today. But it's creating the causes and the conditions. The teachings that we have are inherently nourishing, and just by being with the teachings, allowing ourselves to take them on as a framework for looking at our experience, this in itself is leading towards liberation. We have to. I wouldn't go so far as to use Ajahn Brahm's phrase of brainwashing, but I think it's a re-education, and one that we take on consciously. With brainwashing, there's this idea of you're not really aware of how it's being done, that you're being manipulated. But this is something that has to be done consciously and intelligently, willing to, out of faith and confidence in the Buddha's wisdom, being willing to look at experience through the concepts or through the teachings that he gave us. And this is what is helping to mature the peace of mind that we can experience through meditation. It's only with samadhi that this samadhi can lead on to freedom. So a life of dedication and puja to the Buddha and the Buddhist, that twofold classification I spoke about earlier on. The Buddha said, be my Dhamma heirs through, don't be my material heirs, as to say, don't just take the advantages and the perks of being a member of the Sangha and make that your sole inheritance from the Buddha. But the inheritance that we should have is the Dhamma that he taught, and express the Dhamma that he taught through our own lives. It's a way to maintain Buddha Dhamma in the world, and can see the wonderful civilizing effects of Buddhism in Buddhist countries, as if through a veil. If you study and a little bit and understand that Buddhist cultures always have an admixture of other religious teachings and cultural forms, because Buddhism's never sought to wipe out things which it doesn't agree with. When you can look and just to see the effects that Buddhist teachings have on a whole culture, of whom, of course, at any one time 90% are not really practicing for true liberation. Just the wonderful forms that this has taken. To give very obvious example, comparing Thailand to Malaysia or to Indonesia or to almost any other country, its assimilation of large Chinese population is absolutely unique. It's just so different from anywhere else, and the lack of prejudice and the tolerance of Thai people. Where does this come from, if not from Buddhism? This is one of the beautiful flowers of Buddhism which is manifested in the world, and many people in this country just take it so much for granted they're not even aware that in most of the world people find it intolerable to have to coexist with people who have different belief systems, or feel a need to try to persuade them to change them. This is almost non-existent in Thailand. Actually, I'm reminded of a story. I'll tell you. I think it's reasonably relevant, but there's to give you an idea of a non-Buddhist contrast. There's this man who's going to kill himself. He's just about to jump off a bridge, and another man comes along, sees him, and feels compassion for him, and tries to talk him out of it. So he just says, "Excuse me, are you all right there?" He says, "Are you?" He said, "Are you an atheist, or are you a religious person?" And he says, "Oh, I'm a religious person." He said, "Oh, really? So am I. That's good." He said, "Are you or are you Christian? And he says, Christian. He says, oh, wonderful. So am I. He says, are you Catholic or are you Protestant? He says, Protestant. He says, oh, wonderful. That's nice. So am I. He says, are you Episcopalian or are you Baptist? He says, Baptist, actually. Oh, wonderful. So am I. And he said, are you the Baptist Church of God or the Baptist Church of our Lord? He says, Baptist Church of God. Oh, wonderful. So am I. He says, are you the original Baptist Church of God or the Reformed Baptist Church of God? He says, I'm the Reformed Baptist Church of God, actually. He says, oh, wonderful. Isn't that wonderful? What a branch of the Baptist Church, Reformed Baptist. He says, the 1895. And the guy says, die, heretic scum, and pushes him off the bridge. So this is the kind of attitude that we don't find in Buddhism. So we're able to peacefully coexist, even with people who have quite different views and beliefs that we do. At the very most, we might make fun of them every now and again, but we don't ever push them off bridges or even consider it. And in reflecting on our heritage from the Buddha, then it's good to make these things conscious, to bring them up as ways of strengthening our faith, and the tolerance of Buddhists everywhere in this country is quite remarkable. And there has been an unfortunate tendency of Western Buddhists who've become very interested in meditation to sometimes devalue or denigrate Asian Buddhist traditions and consider them to be quite superficial. But when we see these how deeply some of these values are that have become just part of the culture, and we see that there are some very admirable things to be learned from. And all this has come down from Lord Buddha himself, and the teachings that he gave, and how they gradually spread out in a more refined form in the monastic order, but in Buddhist cultures, in terms of some basic values. Again, an example, not a funny one this time, but something I was reading recently was about a number of cultures, Middle East, for instance, but really all over the world, where they have what they call an honor culture, and where brothers and fathers commonly kill daughters, sisters, if they're considered to have sullied the family's honor. This is a very, very common problem in many countries, and the case that I read about was of a lawyer saying that a woman had come to see him and was crying and distraught, and saying that her husband had been in prison for a few years, a short time, and was coming out, and she was afraid of him. She didn't want to live with him, but she didn't know what to do. And the lawyer asked, well, what did he do? Why was he in prison? And she said, well, my 15-year-old daughter became pregnant, and he killed her to save the family honor. He was put in prison for a few years. Now he's coming out, and the lawyer said, well, that's bad, but he's paid his price, and your daughter did do something which is really against the culture of our country. And the woman said, yes, but my husband was the one who raped my daughter, and she was pregnant because of him. And these kinds of stories are very common, and it's a whole different kind of cultural mindset. And in Thailand, although people have many people are kind of strayed away or have never really come close to a deep and profound understanding of Buddha Dhamma. It's a fertile environment in which the Buddhist values are embedded or are latent, and which people very easily can awaken to. And so this is something to bear in mind. But as Buddhist monks, then it's our responsibility and it's honor as well to really put these teachings into practice, both for our own welfare, but also to encourage and inspire others to do so, as particularly as Caucasian monks, or as well as Western monks, as non-Thai monks. We have a wonderful opportunity to inspire people just by the way we live in our life, not without even having to open your mouth or even to be able to speak Thai, but just being willing to live in this way and to give yourself wholeheartedly to this training of body, speech and mind inspires people all over this country, gives them some encouragement in their own religious life. This is the power of the Sangha, of this form, that it focuses so much. And if you were just practicing as a layman or as a lay meditator, then I'm sure people who see you would feel some mudita and some appreciation. But seeing you in robes and living this way, then there's the effects of it ripple. There's a ripple effect which goes so much farther than it would living outside of this form. So this is the beauty and the power of the bhikkhu form, in that without necessarily giving much conscious thought to spreading the Dhamma, but intending and making our main effort to purify body, speech and mind, and to immerse ourselves in the teachings of the Buddha, we are at the same time creating ripples of goodness and having an effect on the whole community and the culture in which we live. So we, at the same time, we puja, we revere, we worship the Buddha with our practice. At the same time, we're the flag bearers. We're the ones that are keeping the sasana alive, and the ones that are proving to others that this is not some impractical teaching, or it's not something which was perhaps applicable and useful to people hundreds of years ago, but is not appropriate for the present day and age. But we're showing that these teachings are timeless, and wherever country you come from, whatever your cultural background, you can take these teachings and use them and free yourself from the suffering defilements in your mind, and create from the raw materials of your body, speech and mind something truly beautiful and truly precious. And all it needs is this willingness to give time, effort, energy to every breath that you take, to every moment of the day, this sense of respect for the task that you have, and to be single-minded and devoted to that, not to be heedless and careless and sloppy and do it a little bit and then just sort of take some time off. And this is what Ajahn Chah compared to the person who's rubbing the sticks together to get fire and then gets tired and lazy and puts them down, and then a bit later on takes them up again, and never actually rubs the sticks long enough in a concerted enough manner to produce the heat necessary for a flame to rise. And so as bhikkhus, everything's set up in such a way that whatever our distractions and whatever duties are, there's never or shouldn't ever be anything distracting enough that we have to stop rubbing these sticks together. That we can keep rubbing these sticks together no matter what other duties in monastic life we are asked to take on. So really have this feeling of constant effort, adapting to situations, and asking yourself, how can I care for my mind in this situation? What is the Dhamma practice? What is the particular object of mindfulness most appropriate right now? How can I protect my mind, not allow the defilements to sneak in and take over? How can I stay on the path of practice? So inclining the mind towards seclusion, inclining the mind towards peace, the essence of samadhi, one-pointedness. So there always should be the sense of not moving outwards to diffusion, but simplification, bringing inwards, trying to convert, the sense of convergence and harmony of all the different aspects of our life. Looking on samadhi and seeing what is it that characterizes samadhi. Look at whatever your experience is, whether many or few, whether strong or still weak. You can see that there are certain things that characterize the mind when it becomes calm. One is power, energy of mind when it renounces its distractions. Buddha compared this to water streams coming down a mountain, running rapidly, and if you channel all these small streams into one stream, then you get a very strong flow of water. And so if you can channel all the different mental energies into one flow, then you get a very strong mind. And this is the first characteristic of the mind. It becomes calm and clear, becomes strong. There's a resilience, there's an energy there. Two, it's a mind which is peaceful. It's a mind which is calm, clear, and the Buddha says that it's like the still forest pool. Or you look into the pool and you can see those are fish, those are stones, those are weeds, those are this. So you can see everything because the water is undisturbed. As long as the mind is still disturbed by thoughts and memories and anticipations and fantasies. It's like the water is muddied or the water is unclear. You can't see through it. You can't see your mind. You can't see the way things are. And the mind's peaceful. You're able to see how the way things are. It's clear, it's sharp, it's still, limpid. So another aspect is that it's a happy mind. It's peace, clarity is intrinsically pleasant, happy, rapturous. So these are kind of guides as you're working with your mind and you're seeking to do this practice. If you find your mind is energized, the mind is inclining towards taking delight in stillness. You notice a glowing clarity, a sense of well-being. This is a sense that you're on the right track. And then follow this path and seek out and nurture those conditions which encourage those qualities. Shy away from those ways of acting and speaking which undermine or destroy those qualities. And this is the path that we follow in our worship and reverence of the Buddha through our practice. So these are just a few reflections that I would like to offer you this evening.